So hello again, everyone. I am so excited for this conversation. When we began planning this summit, this was the conversation I've been most excited about, and so I feel very lucky that I get to do it. I'm going to introduce our panelists very briefly. Paul Willis, in addition to being my favorite farmer of all time, is the founder of the Niman Ranch Pork Company and a fifth-generation pig farmer from Iowa. Jim Perdue is the chairman of Perdue Farms, the fourth largest chicken producer in the United States, and a producer of turkeys, pigs, and grain. The company was founded in 1920 by your grandfather, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Amazing. So in 2015, Perdue Farms acquired Niman Ranch. And for many folks in the sustainable agriculture world, it was a little bit shocking. They feared that yet another small, really vision-oriented company was being swallowed by a big corporation. But those same critics might be surprised at what has happened since then. And I'm hoping, we can focus this discussion on where both companies are at today and what's kind of changed. So my first question, sorry for the technical difficulties, everyone. So my first question is really why? Why do this? And I think I'll start with you, Paul. Why give up your baby? I mean, this was something you built really from the ground up. And why was this important to you, and why did you think it was needed?
Well, it wasn't actually that simple. And
it never is, right?
Since I started the Niman Ranch Pork Company from in the mid-'90s or late '90s. I actually have seen 4 different owners, and there were the original people involved, and then there was another investment group, and then a group of venture capital people.
Thanks.
And it was, as we continued to grow, Niman Ranch continued to grow to where we got initially, like for example, on the hog side, I was the first farmer, but by this time we had 600 farmers. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't. We were still relatively small, but had come a long ways from where we started, from basically nothing. Mm-hmm. And so it was somewhat inevitable that Niman Ranch would eventually become a company that would be for sale.
Sure.
So that's what happened.
But why Perdue?
Well, I wasn't involved in the actual negotiation myself, but there were other potential buyers of Niman Ranch that I really wouldn't have been happy about. Uh-huh. And what I really came to find out more about later is Perdue is a family-owned business. That's different than a publicly traded
Sure.
company, and I didn't realize initially how much different that was. But it makes a great deal of difference. It's not just bottom line driven, but you can have the things that you're founded on. You can continue with that. And
Great. So, Jim, I want to turn to you. Why was this something that Perdue Farms wanted to do? I mean, Niman Ranch Pork Company has obviously a great brand. People respect and trust them. But why bring them on?
Well, our vision as a company is to be the most trusted name in premium protein, and so it doesn't say chicken. And so we had gotten together with Coleman Natural Chicken, and they also had pork at the time. And the pork business we were interested in the organic chicken business, which launched us into that business. But the pork business was growing by leaps and bounds, and we needed, and we did not have a facility. But at the same time, we knew about Niman Ranch, but we didn't know as much as we knew later,
Sure.
which was a real gem. And so when we got together, we combined the Coleman and the Niman into the same business, and kept it separate. And that was one of the objectives: is they're successful for some reason. Let's let them continue to be successful.
But you did that for another reason too, right? Because you wanted to learn from what they were doing.
Well, that naturally came out of it. It was funny, 2 weeks after we got together as companies, Paul invited me out to the Farmer Appreciation Dinner where these 600 farmers are in Des Moines, Iowa.
Ben, it's crazy.
And he said, Jim, you got to get up and say something.
Right.
Well, I felt like I was going to get hit by something. And So I got up and just said, you know, we're almost 100 years old, we're a family business, and the normal thing. And afterwards, one of the farmers came up to me and said, Mr. Perdue, I like what you said, and we're going to give you a chance.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I can't ask for more than that, you know. But but you know, what's happened over time is the philosophy that Paul and the Niman folks have about producing a better product, and it's a win-win because of, you know, the way you treat the animals in his business affects the quality of the product.
Absolutely.
And that was a tremendous idea for us. And you know, we've been focused more as a traditional poultry company on the end products that you see in the market. Not so much what's happening on the farm, not so much the farmers.
Right.
And of course, it became very obvious that they're focused totally on the farm and the farmers. And where we used to be, literally, my dad, you know, 40 years ago, that was the focus of our company. So we said, well, maybe we can produce a better tasting product by how we raise the animals, and how we harvest the animals, reducing anxiety, reducing stress, encouraging activity. And we had just gone through a no antibiotics effort, 12-year effort, and removed no antibiotics totally from our product line. We'd gone into organic, and we noticed that the organic chickens were definitely different than the conventional.
Different how?
Different in meat quality, tenderness, not so much flavor at this point. But
and you see consumers responding to that.
yes, well, we do a lot of testing, and we saw that, and it really caught our eye. So it hooked up with their idea of this whole idea. So we've gone back to, for example, they were all dark houses. You had to use a headlamp to work in these houses.
Sure.
And so we're putting windows back in all of our houses, and we're about halfway through, you know, 7,000.
How many houses are we talking about?
We're talking about, you know, 4,000, 5,000 houses. And so we're footing the bill for that because we want the chickens to actually move now. And so we're putting enhancements in there to encourage them to get up on different kind of apparatus, you know, and they do that. If you give them the opportunity to do that, they will do that.
Absolutely.
We're finding already that they're healthier. I think just having the light. And of course, now we're going to, half of our chickens we're going to have pasture access, you know, which is part of the organic program. But we think, again, this is part of doubling the activity of our chickens is what we're talking about.
Sure, sure. So I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the criticism. You know, I know you're making all these strides on animal welfare, but there are still critics. Paul, I know you and others at Niman Ranch were criticized for you know, becoming part of Perdue Farms. How did you handle that? I mean, I think now maybe the proof is out there and people understand why you did it, but initially, how did that all go?
Well, initially there was a skepticism, and time has proven the skeptics, I think, to be wrong. And you know, the way we were raising animals, the cornerstone of it, animal welfare, being better for the animals, better for the farmers, better for the environment, and ultimately the customer has dovetailed in with what Perdue was doing. And when people see that and the direction Perdue and Niman Ranch, part of Perdue, but are a totally separate brand.
Sure.
And functioning separately. When all that has happened, you know, I guess the skeptics have been quieted to some extent.
Sure. How about the skepticism on your end? Were any executives at Perdue Farms thinking, what are you doing? Why is this happening? Or was everyone on board?
Well, you know, we've gone through a lot of changes, and for example, animal welfare groups that Paul's been working with now come to our corporate office every summer. We have a meeting with them and customers, much like the farmer appreciation dinners they have. That's a big change.
Yeah.
Certainly in our industry, I can tell you.
Was that scary?
I think the first meeting was fascinating. I think everybody was on edge. But we've just completed our fourth meeting, and Paul, was there, and I think we find that we're 90% in agreement. There's things you're always going to negotiate, but like windows, they're very excited. They want to do that. They want to encourage it, and they know that we can be a tipping point. You know, they know that in antibiotics, when we went 100%, that was a tipping point, and all of our competitors were forced to do that.
Absolutely.
And I think the same thing can happen on animal welfare, that if we can prove that this is a winning model, that can happen. So, but when you have 21,000 people, you know, you're trying to get them all to think differently, like bringing animal welfare groups to your office, like growing chickens outside. All these are very, very different from where we were.
Absolutely.
And so it takes a while to make sure everybody comes along. You have early adopters, but then you have laggards, and sooner or later you have to get on board, or you shouldn't be here. I mean, that's what's going to happen, I think.
Yeah.
And there is an animal care steering committee. It was formed by Perdue. I sit on that as well, as does Jim. But all of these issues are brought up and discussed for the purposes of moving this agenda forward.
It's so interesting.
That didn't exist before.
Yeah, no, it's so interesting to bring all those different players together and collaborate rather than just sort of being adversarial all the time.
And I'll tell you, one thing we love about any group that we get with in any company is passion. And somebody has a lot of passion for what they do. It's this guy. And that's what really draws you to you know, to looking at what they're doing. It really does.
Absolutely. What advice would you give, both of you, to give to other companies, small and large, who are thinking of building the kinds of collaboration that you did? I mean, this wasn't an easy process. I mean, we've made probably light of it a little bit and made it seem really easy, but it was difficult, I think, in many ways. What advice would you give, you know, another big company, Jim, and what advice, Paul, would you give a smaller company about how to do this together? Well,
I think I think there's too much in the U.S. where a company, you know, merges with another company and then they make it like them,
right?
And oftentimes destroy it. You know, there's a formula that makes a company successful: a culture, values, and you've got to let those stay in place. I think it so happens their values and our values are so closely entwined that, you know, that's not as big of an issue. But we've done this before, where we try to let the company, they're successful for some reason.
Right.
Why Perdue-ize them, as we call it?
Sure.
You know, because that's not necessarily going to make them successful in the future. And if anything, we're learning more from them than they're learning from us. Now we can provide capital, our safe work conditions in our plants. We're working and helping them a lot of things, building a new facility for some of their harvest. So there's things we can do, but we don't want to mess around with their success.
That's great. That's great. Paul, any advice?
Well, even from the beginning, to really make an impact on how America eats, if you will, you want to have some bigger players. And so
it's that issue of scale, right?
Issue of scale. And I mean, even though Niman Ranch had grown from nothing to something significant, really when we joined hands with Perdue, we were able to have, as Jim said, some influence on a larger company that's really going to have ultimately a pretty big impact.
Absolutely. I am going to take one question from the audience. It has to be a question with a question mark at the end. So I don't know where the mic runners are, and I can't see that well. So there was somebody in the middle over here, I think, who had a question. Right here, this young person right here.
Hi, thanks so much. So I'm personally someone who does think that it is really important to keep like our agricultural landscapes in the U.S. kind of the way they are in certain ways, but I know in this discussion we've already been having all day, there's been a lot of discussion about this plant-forward future and things like that. So I was wondering, as like meat companies, meat packaging companies, where do you see yourselves kind of in like the role you have in this kind of plant-forward future that a lot of the people in this so-called food movement are now talking about?
The plant-forward?
Plant-forward. How are you dealing with sort of the plant-forward movement?
Yeah. Well, in September, you know, we and I'll tell you, the idea came from some of these animal welfare. Leo Garces, you know, was talking to us about this and in Compassionate World Farming, and so we just launched a chicken nugget that's 40% vegetable, And so it's a half serving of vegetables with each serving of chicken. And so that's kind of a start. We think we can expand on that. We're all about providing whatever the consumer wants. And if that's what the consumer wants, then that's the direction we need to go.
Absolutely. Paul, any thoughts on sort of this interest in more plant-forward diets?
Well, I might just say that, you know, even though we're a meat company, we don't really believe that everybody should eat more meat, and that you should make choices and rather than eat better meat. In other words, you need to know where it's coming from.
Absolutely. I think that's a wonderful point to end on. Thank you both so much for being here today. It's been a wonderful conversation.
Thanks, Danny.
Thank you, Danielle.